Alrighty, so again, yesterday, on your homework yesterday, were there any major questions from yesterday? Anything that you guys needed? This was yesterday's assignment. First, you had to solve for x, and then you had to find the value when the output is -3. Any questions there? And then the bottom 4, you had to find the inverse function. So you had to switch x and y and then graph both. I think those ones were pretty easy. Any questions on yesterday's homework at all? All right. Then you guys talked about the notes. You went through the notes yesterday, and it talked again about whether or not the inverse is a function. You can look at, and it was hard without being here to explain that, you can look at the original function. If you look at the original function, you can use the horizontal line test to determine if the inverse passes the vertical line test. Okay? So if you're looking at the original graph, does it pass the horizontal line test? No, that means the inverse will not pass the vertical line test. Okay, and that's kind of what we talked about here. So we did restrict some domains in order to make it a function. Were there any questions on the notes? Did you guys watch the whole video? Any questions at all on the notes from yesterday? You guys had time to get through them. You watched them on your own. You guys were good? Okay, so homework for today. The first one's on today, find the inverse, then graph, and then the same thing on the other ones, find the inverse and then graph. Which ones gave you issues on last night? I feel like I cut this homework down. Is this what your homework was? Yeah, through 36. See, you guys, I used to make them do through 40. Now you only have to do through 36. So see, you guys have won a little bit. All right, so questions at all on the homework from last night? How'd you guys do? Pretty good? All right, so here's the plan for the rest of this week. Today we're going to do day 3 on 5-7. So day 3 today. Tomorrow, you guys will come in, we'll go over our worksheet, and then get the practice test. Tomorrow's a really easy day. Go over the worksheet, do the practice test. Then on Thursday, we will go over that practice test in class, and then on Friday is your test over chapter 5. Okay? Test over chapter 5. I will give you back that test over. I gotta see if everybody's done taking it. Let me see. I feel like I have one more person left to take this. Let me look once. Where's everybody done? Andrew, Coley, Maggie, Brady, Ashley, Cole. Landon's been out forever. So let me talk to Cole, and then I'll get you guys that test back tomorrow. A quiz from the first half of the chapter to keep. Okay? All right, pass those blue papers in.
Yeah. Wait, is it all true? Yeah, check. No, it's just like it's just like kind of hard. I thought they were all true. So you just have to just listen. Listen closely. Really? I thought those 2 out of 8, there were 6 different people. Yeah. 32. I've heard 5. 8.
Okay. Who's our cousin?
I think 5 is false.
Okay, that's fine. I'll make 7th grade. Okay, that's fine. When I see a little lost 7th grader coming in, I'll know. Okay. All right, thank you. All righty, so let's take a look at today's notes. Day 3 of inverses. First example, determine whether the inverse of f is a function, then find the inverse, if it exists, okay? So, or we can find the inverse, we just can't, it might not be a function. Let's grab our graphing calculators. things I can do is graph the original function. So I'm going to graph the original function on my graphing calculator. So I'm going to go to y equals, I'm going to clear out my y equals, make sure my plot is turned off. And the only thing I have to make sure I do when I divide, if you have old school calculator, make sure when you do x squared plus 1, it's in parentheses. Those of you who have the newer calculators, it puts it in the bottom of the fraction, so you're fine without parentheses. Okay? And then I'm going to do zoom 6. Okay? It's kind of hard to see. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. So I'm going to go to my window and I'm going to make my y min, let's go from like -2 to 2. So I'm just like zooming way in. -2 to 2 and graph. All right. So now, does it pass the vertical? I guess I didn't even need to zoom in. Does it pass the horizontal line test? I could have seen that with the little graph, but it was tiny. Okay. Does it pass the horizontal line test? So will the inverse be a function? No. So we know the inverse is not a function because the original does not pass the horizontal line test. Are we good with step 1?
What's the horizontal line test?
The horizontal line test?
Yeah.
That was yesterday. Did you watch the video yesterday? Yeah. Did I talk about the horizontal line test on the video?
Yep.
True. I just went over that. Horizontal line test. Right here. I need to quit making googly eyes at Josh over there. Or somebody over there. I can't tell who it is. Okay. Right here. We said if the original graph does not pass the horizontal line test, that means the inverse will not pass the vertical line test. Does that make sense? So once I graphed that was from yesterday's notes. So I graphed it on the graphing calculator. This is the original function. I put that in my graphing calculator. Does it pass the horizontal line test? So then that means the inverse will not pass the vertical line test, not a function. If it does pass the horizontal line test, then that means the inverse will pass the vertical line test, which means it is a function. Make sense? Okay. Anybody else? Now, find the inverse. All right, what do you guys do with x and y? Flip them. So to find the inverse, I'm going to take x and y and flip this. So I'm just going to say x equals 1 over y squared plus 1. So is everybody okay with how I did that? All right, how do I get y out of the denominator? By what? Okay, or the reciprocal, or I could just multiply by y squared plus 1. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do it to the other. So this side, I get y squared plus 1 times x, and then these cancel, and I get 1. Now remember, I'm trying to get y by itself, so now let's get rid of x over there. How do I get rid of x over there? Divide by what? X. So when I do, I get y squared plus 1 equals 1 over x. Okay, still trying to get y by itself. What do you guys want to do now? Subtract 1 from both sides. When I subtract 1, I get y squared equals 1 over x minus 1. How do I undo y squared? Now, be careful. When you take the square root, the domain is not restricted of the original problem, which means the range is not restricted here. So what do I have to remember to put out front? Plus or minus. Now, the only difference from last night to tonight is I am not allowed to change that y to f negative 1 of x because it's not a function. So you can't use function notation because we said the inverse is not a function. So you cannot use f negative 1 of x notation. That's the only difference. Okay? Because yesterday you did the same thing. Determine if it's a function. They all were functions last night. Find the inverse. So you would change this to f negative 1 of x. This one's not a function, so you can't change it to f negative 1 of x. Okay? Questions here? We all good? All right, next part. You can use a composition of functions to verify that two functions are inverses. Now, if it says use compositions, you may not switch x and y and say, well, I got the same equation or I got a different equation. You can't do that. So notice on your homework tonight, for numbers 7 and 8, it says use composition of functions, so you must do this. Because inverse functions undo each other, when you compose two inverses, the result is always x. This is really confusing to basically just say, when you do a composition, remember composition is f of g of x. Okay, so when you put g in f, you're going to get x. And when you put f in g, you're going to get x, if they're inverses. So if f and g are inverses, and you find f of g of x, it's x. G of f of x, it's x. Okay? If they're not x, they're not inverses. Best way to do this is an example. Determine by composition 7 and 8 in your homework tonight. A problem on your quiz or test on Friday says by composition. You cannot just switch x and y and say I did or did not get g. So let's talk composition. First, we have to find f of g of x. Okay, what's g of x, everybody? X plus 1 over 3. So now I'm going to go to function what? F of x. And everywhere I see an x, I have to put all of what? X plus 1 over 3. Okay, so I'm going to do 3, and then in place of there, I put x plus 1 over 3 minus 1. So is everybody okay with just how I set this up? Now, fraction work, y'all. Hate fractions, and you can't put this in your calculator. And this is where you guys go yucky. What happens to this 3 in that denominator? They cancel. So what do you have left? Ooh, no, you don't. You just have what? X plus 1 minus, because those cancel. Now, what's x plus 1 minus 1? All right, so f of g of x was what? All right, that one worked. We're halfway there. Now we got to show that what? G of f of x is x. So now we're going to do g of, what's f of x? 3x minus 1. So now you're going to put 3x minus 1 in there. So that gives me 3x minus 1 plus 1 all over 3. So I just put 3x minus 1 in for x plus 1 all divided by 3. Now clean it up. Remember, your division sign, your fraction sign acts like a grouping symbol. You have to do your numerator first. What's 3x minus 1 plus 1? And what's 3x over 3? X. So that means g of f of x is x. So are these inverses? Yes. So this is compositions. Do not switch x and y when it asks to show you by compositions. 7 and 8 on your homework tonight. Thoughts on those? All right, let's try another one. we're going to try f of g of x. Okay, what's g of x? Cube root of. So now I'm going to go to f, and that's 8 times cube root of 2x to the third, right? Because all I did is right here, put in all of that. So I have 8, and then in parentheses, cube root of 2x to the third. Okay, what cancels? The cube root and the cube. Okay, and so I get 8 times what? 2x. 8 times, what's 8 times 2x? If you don't get x for the first one, guess what? You're done. Are these inverses? They are not inverses. Now, if I were taking the test, I would probably check g of f of x just to make sure I didn't mess up somewhere. Okay? But in this case, we're good. But I would probably check to make sure. Because if I got x for g of f of x, then maybe I did something wrong over here. Okay? All right. We are not doing the word problem. We're done. Whoa. Your homework. You do have to graph numbers 5 and 6. And you're only doing through 7 and 8. 7 and 8, you have to show composition, so you might need a separate paper for those. Other than that, you got the rest of class time to get started. Huh? You do have a lot of time. You're welcome.
Oh, bye, man. We are pulling.
Wait,
Does it say to graph?
it says then graph the function.
Oh, yeah, I guess you do have to graph. You have a lot of graphing. Sorry, I lied. All right, so who was absent in this class? I am just like, I gotta mix that. And I'll be around to see who needs help on what.
Oh, really?
110 is equal to x. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a x over 10.
Why is it x over 10?
Put it equal to x.
Talk to other people around you. That's what I would love for. Papers for people who were absent.
Sure, give me a graph.
Sure, I can move this page. Or, yeah, if you need room to write. Yep.
So you get 1, 0, 1.
Where'd Laura go?
Miss Napples, are you able just for the inverse to flip these still?
Yeah. If it asks you to find the inverse, then yes. Oh, you guys are full of questions that I don't have the answers to. Find the inverse, then graph the function and its inverse. So, yep, both.
On the test, will there be like will there be a number of numbers that we have to graph? Or does it matter how much we still have to do 5?
Then why are you singing how do you like Charlotte?
Got lots of good questions.
Wait, you only have to grab. Which ones you have to grab?
And
Hers was like,
Cash, I was really kind to you on the test, and you don't have to graph any exponentials. The only one you have to graph is linear, so you're going to do some linearize over run.
Thing is this side.
That's
Mitch, where's Mitch? This was in the folder from a while ago. Yes, Mr. Labert.
Tomorrow, I'm probably gonna be
Out tomorrow. Okay.
Lord Von watch her beginning part of the
wow.
but I can go into this. Her fingers. So she's at 16. That's always. Wait, are you trying to
Yeah, perfect.
You
Yeah,
want
I'll do that. Yeah. Tell her she knows.
Right, yeah. So if you just said, just make sure you do it.
Yes. Those are the guidance.
I got a copy of it.
Oh, okay. I wasn't here yesterday, and I told him about the news.
Yeah, I watched the.
Okay, yeah. He emailed me, and I said I'm not here.
X tentacle.
But I didn't know if he was or not, so I didn't.
And I got the.
Did he, he took a picture of it or something? Or?
You got a blue copy.
Yeah, I would love the copy. That's funny.
He
just took the
just handed. He's a fine package. You just handed the guy notes in the team.
Let me take my answer key.
What's 5 days ago? It took the fifth of pretty package.
I'm sure Mr. Burkhart was like, whatever Mr. Licky wanted, he was willing to give to him.
Divided by 5.
You're plus. I was just thinking.
Oh, I'm still recording.